All right, welcome back. So, what we're going to look at today is the causes of the United States Civil War. So, the Civil War or a Civil War is not unique to America. It is a war against like a country within itself. So, there's no foreign enemy. The enemy is within the same country. That's what we're talking about with Civil War. It's typically in some type of rebellion against the current government, which is what we're going to see here. Um, Also pictured here, we see the two flags of both countries. People don't usually think of this as a country's flag, but the Confederate States of America, they had their own president, they had their own government, they had their own military. This very much was like its own country for at least the 4 years in its existence. Then we have the United States. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit closer look at the causes, what happened leading to the Civil War. We've already looked at some of them. Mexican American War is going to be an indirect cause. We're going to look more at the direct causes as we go forth. All right. First, social causes. Let me put myself in a good spot. I don't really belong beside any of them. So it's funny how my orientation changes. So if I go this way, if I go that way. All right. Oh, man. Social causes. Okay. Abolitionist movement. Abolitionist movement. These were it's called for the abolishment of slavery. The key word there is abolition or abolition. Abolish, to get rid of. And the topic here is to get rid of slavery. The practice to get rid of is slavery. Some examples: Harriet Tubman. She led the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a series of trails, paths that would be used by runaway slaves to escape the South and go to the free North. You have Frederick Douglass, who was really probably one of the more infamous voices of the abolitionist movement. Frederick Douglass was highly educated, freed slave, and was very influential in the abolitionist movement, as well as William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison would be an ally of the abolitionist movement and would write various periodicals and newspapers and pamphlets that would reach a different audience or a larger audience, maybe. The next social cause is sectionalism. Sectionalism is the extreme devotion to interest of a region as opposed to a whole area. So let's think about it this way. If let's say California, Oregon, Washington, like the West Coast. Let's say that a bunch of people moved out there, more than that's already out there. A bunch more people move out there, and to win the presidential election, you only have to win those three states. Like if you win those three states, you've won the presidential election. Now imagine a candidate winning those three states. That's how they won the election. That's how they'll win their reelection. So, are they going to favor those three states opposed to the rest of the country? Well, it's possible. It's possible. What if those three states have very different views from the rest of the 47 states? Well, that's how you win an election, though. It makes it difficult. And the problem here is when you start splitting up into just areas of the country and you only think about what's good for your section, your area. You can do things to hurt other areas. How should you vote, for example? Should it be based on like your area? Should it be on you? Should it be on the country's sake? That's a good question. I think most of us are trying to figure that out. But we can see how that could be problematic, especially in this time where you have a very different industrial North versus the agricultural South. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Uncle Tom's Cabin, another social cause. Put that down as a social cause because, it has a large impact, and it is neither in the economic or the political realm. So, how is a book influential in creating the largest war in American history, at least in terms of deaths? Well, it's because it showed the brutality of slavery. Not common misconception. Most people think that everybody in the South owned slaves. That is not the case. 1 in 4 white land-owning males owned slaves. It's pretty much the ones that could afford it. Slavery was not like cheap. It was a business. Like that's what it was. It was a business. I hate to talk about people like that because I'm not going to get self-righteous. But I mean, it was a business, okay, and you had to afford, you had to have enough money to buy slaves, and so you had to have enough that you were producing in order to make that money. So it was really only large farm owners, which we call plantation. Randolph County, not much slavery going on here. Not much slavery going on here. Randolph County is one of the only counties in North Carolina to actually vote against secession because the large Quaker population and the fact that there weren't many like really rich landowning males in the area uh, kept Randolph County from voting in favor of leaving the Union. All right. So, Uncle Tom's Cabin showed the brutality of slavery to people that didn't know anything about slavery, and there was a lot of people that way. Next, we have economic causes. So, again, you had the industrial North versus the agricultural South. When we think of industry, we think of factories. That's what this is right here. This is a factory. We think of agriculture, we think of farming. This is farming. I'll tell you this. The South, like they were obviously looked down upon by the Northerners because of the institution of slavery. The Southerners also looked down on the Northerners, especially these like factory owners, because, well, you want to know where apartment buildings came from? They came from the fact that you had all these workers that had to work in these factories, but they weren't paid like much at all. This is before any type of like minimum wage, so they weren't earning a living. Instead, they were working a job in order really just to feed themselves and feed their families. And in exchange, or what they would, like they had to live like in the building they were working in. That's where these apartment buildings came from. And they would start being built right alongside these factories so that the workers had a place to sleep. So there's some similarities between the industrial North and the agricultural South. Now, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not saying these people didn't have freedoms, because they definitely did. They could, vote. They could move if they had the money to do so. But they did have freedom. But the way the Southerners were looking at this is like, there's really not much difference in what you're doing versus what we're doing. Take that as you may. The expansion of America. So as America expands, America, think about this. America in 1783. That's the end of the Revolutionary War. It's just this right here, just this along the coast. 1803, it remained, just a little bit further west. 1803, Louisiana Purchase is. I gotta turn this back on. Hold on. Louisiana Purchase. So that opens up this land like out here. Then you have the Mexican-American War, and that's taken, and the rest of this is taken. So America is expanding very quickly. Why is this a problem? Well, in these new territories, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to allow slavery, disallow slavery? There's a couple of different ideas that come up. One happened in 1820 is like, all right, well, let's just keep the number of slave states and free states like offsetting. So let's keep them the same. Then it's like, okay, let's draw a line through the middle of the country and everything below it has slaves, everything above it doesn't. Then there's popular sovereignty, which says just let the states decide for themselves if they want to have slavery or not. But the issue here is, what should we do about slavery? And that's an economic cause, because the Southerners, the people that have slaves, they want to continue to to kind of build upon this, because the fact that slavery is legal gives them ability to make a lot of money farming. Okay, a lot of money farming, and these people that have a lot of money from farming, they're able to like exponentially grow that with slavery. Yes, it is free labor. I mean, I say free. They don't have to pay the. I guess that's kind of a loaded question. They don't have to pay the workers, but they are paying for the workers. If they have a child, though, it's kind of up for. Okay, it's a loaded question. Tariffs. Tariffs is also a economic cause. So the South, the states you see in red, primarily, for the most part, There's a couple that don't really belong there. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to kind of stop depending on the Northerners. The Northerners weren't innocent. They weren't like 100% innocent. They were profiting off of slave labor because these resources, especially cotton, that was harvested by the Southerners, were being sent to the North so that they could make things like clothes, anything with cotton in them. And then they were being sold back to either overseas or back to the Southerners. So the Southerners, they want to just cut out the North. They're for different reasons, more so politically. They just want to cut out the North. If you hurt them economically, you'll hurt them politically because then people would leave the North. But the government, the United States government, what they do is they place taxes on anything coming in from Europe in the South. What that does is it makes the Southerners, if they want to cut out the North, they're going to have to spend a lot of money to do so. So it just makes it a lot more economically friendly just to buy goods from the North, thus continuing this problem that the Southerners have with the Northerners have with the Southerners. All right. Lastly, we have political causes. All right. We'll give this my best shot. So Dred Scott. I'm going to just kind of cut to the chase. Dred Scott was appealing for his freedom. He was a former slave. He was now in free state territory, and he appealed his freedom and ended up going to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court decision in 1857, the Supreme Court said that I'll just tell you exactly what it says. It ruled Negroes whose ancestors were slaves could not be a U.S. citizen. So if you are black and your ancestors had been slaves, you could not be a United States citizen ever. Now, this is not the case today. We know this. That would change in 1865 to 1868 with the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment, 13th and 14th Amendment. Number two, political cause, state rights and slavery. So again, slavery we can kind of put in the social category, we put in the economic category, we put in the political category. I decided to put it here with states' rights because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Growing up, I always heard, the Civil War wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. It was about slavery, but it was also about states' rights. Both of them are true. The Southern states believed that state government should have more power than the federal government. They wanted to make their own rules. Why would they want to make their own rules? Well, one of them is to make sure that slavery is not abolished. So you can't separate slavery from the Civil War. There are some misconceptions for sure, but you can't separate them. But you also can't separate the idea of like states' rights because that was a large problem as well. Because if the states have more power, well, then that makes the federal government less powerful. So then, your more populated states are going to have more power than other states. They may bring more people in because of their laws. I mean, think about it. Like, if, let's say, here's a good example. What was it? Washington State, they decriminalize all drugs. So if you're like, if that's your thing, then where are you moving? You're moving to Washington, right? Think about if a bunch of people move to Washington. Well, that sways political power because population is how we decide electoral votes. Electoral votes decide who becomes president and who is, in what party is essentially in power of the executive branch. So there's a lot there. States' rights are important, and it is a large cause to the Civil War along with slavery. Number three is John Brown's attack on Harper's Ferry. John Brown tried to lead a slave rebellion. What does this mean? Well, John Brown, he and his sons raided Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry was an armory for the United States military. So there's weaponry there. He wanted to take those weapons, arm the slaves of the South to overthrow their masters and to completely overthrow the system. Well, it's caught. Several of his sons are killed. John Brown is subsequently executed in 1960. He didn't live 100 more than 1860. There we go. Lastly, the final or the first, I guess you can look at dominoes different ways. is the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Abraham Lincoln was the most hated president during his lifetime. You may say, I don't believe that. Everybody loves Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, today, but not back then. No, not back then. Lincoln did not want slavery to spread. He wasn't necessarily like trying to stop it, but he just didn't want it to spread. He thought that it was morally bad, but he wanted to keep the country together. We can talk more about that tomorrow. After the election of Abraham Lincoln, 7 states initially seceded. Seceded means to withdraw, to leave. That would be 11 after the Battle of Fort Sumter in 1861. All right. So the last thing I want to show you, a couple maps. I love maps. So I need you to look at this map. That's a good place for my face. Need you to look at this. So as you can see, this is color-coded with candidates during the election of 1860. You have the Republican, Lincoln. You have the Southern Democrat, John Breckinridge. You have the Constitutional Union candidate, John Bell. And then you have the Northern Democrat candidate, Stephen Douglas. All right, Stephen Douglas, yeah, you won 2 states. You won 2 states. You did finish second in the popular vote. So you are popular. He got voted for around the whole country, but not enough to win more than the 12 electoral votes he comes up with. Let's see. Let's look at electoral vote. Let's look at popular vote. I already started on that. Popular vote next goes to John Breckinridge, and you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 states of the South vote for John Breckinridge. He is the Democratic candidate from the South. Next, you have John Bell. John Bell, he wins 3 states, 4 states. Hard to tell. He wins Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. So, again, he finishes, 4th in the popular vote, but he finishes 3rd in the electoral vote. Abraham Lincoln, wins the majority of electoral votes, and he wins 40% of the popular vote. Okay? So, one thing I want you to understand, though, none of the 11 states that will secede voted for Lincoln. He wasn't even on the ballot. In most of these southern states because they worried that he wanted to get rid of slavery, and they worried that he was going to make the federal government more powerful. And that is something that the states did not want. Now, look at this map. Now, look at the next map. This is Civil War map. So you have the red states. These are Confederate states. You have the Union states. These are the blue states. And then you have border states. We'll talk about those in a minute. But again, look back at the map previous. Oh, dang it. Can I just do that? Map. Look how similar they are. I'm gonna keep going. Boom, 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 boom. They can't tell the whoa. Can't tell the difference. All right. The last thing about border states. Border states are states that were still in the Union, but still practice slavery. That can tell you a couple things. One of the main things it can tell you is that it was not just about, hey, how you doing? One of the things that this can tell us just by looking at this map, and then we can compare it back to that map. One of the things this map can tell us with the border states is that the Civil War was not just about slavery. It is a key issue, no doubt. Do not get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. It is a major issue, is a key issue of the Civil War, but it is not the only issue. Because if it was the only issue, border states wouldn't have existed. Simple. That's simple. We'll look at the Emancipation Proclamation and get a better look at it, but yeah, it's a complicated issue, and that's history. It's complicated. It's not simple. It takes a lot of digging, a lot of research. Appreciate you. See you tomorrow.